This is an interview with Sergeant Don McKay on the 18th of May 2004. Army number V54635 and VX118205. 39th Battalion, A Company, 7 Platoon. Firstly, Don, how did you become to be known as JD?
Well, when we all went to the 39th, we're from the 5th Battalion Victorian Scottish originally, and we had a group there and we met up and they were all asking one another's names. When we were at Darley, this was, and there was a fella called Shady Smith, and he says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Don McKay." He said, "Oh, that's, Don, everybody's Don." He said, "JD." He said, "We'll call you JD," and that's what I've been known for 60 odd years.
Just describe the camp at Darley and what your training consisted of.
Well, when it was hutted, it was all huts at Darley, and it was very good. It was good accommodations. It was in those days. It was palliasses on the floor. I forget how many there was to a hut. I think there was 2 sections to a hut, or it might have been the platoon, 3 sections to a hut. And the training was fairly basic. We did, matter of fact, the fellas that were training this school were all first AIF fellas. Company Sergeant Major was George Mowat. He was a military medal from the First World War in the 59th Battalion, the same battalion as my old man. And our CQMS was a captain in the First World War, George Mowat. He was a military cross winner, but he was a staff sergeant. He didn't get commissioned because Jim was supposed to have leftist tendencies in those days, so he was a staff sergeant. Later on, of course, he saved my life, old Jim. But the training, was mainly field work around the hills. I've been there since and found out the area, although it's changed a bit, the hills haven't. But the camp's gone, of course.
Do you think the training prepared you for New Guinea?
No, I don't think anything did. It was till many years later, after the Second World War, I think, that we started to do jungle training. There was no jungle training. It was all desert training.
There was talk in the early days about conflict between the AIF soldiers and the militia, and they were called Chocos. What have you got to say about that?
Oh, that's right. It was too. A lot of us had tried to join the AIF. I was too young. I tried to join the AIF when I was just 17, and the old man got me out. And they did, but it wasn't great. I suppose there was, but it didn't worry me greatly.
And how did you feel about going to New Guinea? Because the battalion was being formed for tropical service, was that right? And
That's right.
And you knew it was going to New Guinea. So how did you feel about that?
Good. Well, that's why I went to 39th. Pardon me, I couldn't get into the AIF, so we were supposed to be a garrison battalion in New Guinea, so I was quite excited about it.
And in your platoon, what were your duties primarily going to be in New Guinea?
Oh, I was a private soldier then, and I was a member of an infantry section, but I must have been a star in those days, because I can remember later on the CSM used to read out all the battalion duties, and the highlight of my career, I think the whole of my army career, was he read out all the duties. He read out the battalion orderly sergeant was so-and-so, and battalion orderly corporal was Private McKay. Oh, my great big moment. Big head.
So that means you went from a private to a corporal in one jump.
Yeah, but I didn't get it then. Of course, it was some before we went. When I got to New Guinea, I was promoted Lance Corporal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after training at Darley, you left by train
Right.
camped up to Sydney, and then you caught the troop ship Aquitania.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Where did the Aquitania leave from?
Oh, goodness me, I should know. I haven't been in Sydney a long time.
Is it Woolloomooloo?
Yeah, Woolloomooloo.
Woolloomooloo.
Yeah, it was from one of the wharfs there, yeah.
And what do you remember about the trip in the Aquitania up to New Guinea?
It was good, and we were lucky. We got shown to our cabins, you know, and it didn't seem, it was right down the bowels of the ship. There was nothing exciting about it, but my section got posted. They had built up what they call that. They were like machine gun posts on the upper deck, which was for submarine and aircraft, and our section was for submarine and aircraft lookout. You know, used to look straight up for the aircraft and over the side of the ship for the submarines. We didn't know, but it meant that we were on deck all the time, so we used to sleep up there, so it was good.
What was the atmosphere like on the ship as you got closer to New Guinea? Was it sort of a bit nervous, exciting?
No, exciting, I think, was the term. It was good. There was... I always remember the big moment. They had a shoot. They put up a box kite, and everybody had to fire at this box kite. And an old mate of mine, an old 39th bloke, he was a sergeant then, Bill Guest, said they pulled it in, there was one bullet hole in it, so I don't know how we'd have gone.
Just briefly, JD, what other units were on the Aquitania with you that you can remember?
The 53rd Battalion. I don't know anybody else. I know the 53rd was there.
And when the Aquitania arrived at Port Moresby, how did you feel when you first arrived, and what did you do when you first got off the ship?
Well, when we went ashore, I think it was on the destroyer, the Stewart. It was a New Zealand one. It was one of our escorts, and the Aquitania couldn't get into the wharf, and we went ashore on the destroyer. You know, it was pretty odd because it was a real, it was something out of the movies as far as I'm concerned. You know, there was trade stores, you know, there was natives, and you know, it impressed me. But of course, we had to march from there to the 7 Mile, which was an airport, aerodrome then. We didn't know we were marching there, but we got there and we started the march. It was just on dark. And of course we marched right through the dark to the 7 Mile.
Did the whole battalion march?
The whole battalion marched, yeah.
And who was the commanding officer at that stage? Was it
Conran?
Conran?
Yeah, Colonel Conran.
What happened to Colonel Conran?
He was relieved when they took out the First World War blokes. And
were they replaced with...
they were replaced with AIF men.
Were these experienced AIF men from...
Yes, they were. They were coming from from overseas.
From the Middle East battalions.
Yes. And apart from the senior officers, the subalterns had been non-commissioned officers and warrant officers, you know, and they'd just been commissioned.
When these new officers who were experienced from the Middle East came to the battalion, was there a difference? Did you notice a difference in the morale, or did things pick up a bit as far as training goes? Or?
Well, I did. I noticed training that was picked up because up to that stage we'd done wharf duties, you know, we were digging holes, and my section was put onto the 7 Mile drome. There was the road, it's not there now, but the road used to go right across the 7 Mile, further on, up towards the mountains. The RAAF had troops up there, and we were Lance Corporal McKay. I was in command, and when the planes took off, there was only Wirraways. There was a couple of Wirraway fighters, and a couple of, goodness me, what was the name of them? old bombers used to, Hudsons, they used to come up from Horn Island and they'd refuel at Moresby and go out on reconnaissance. And we used to have to roll 44-gallon drums of aviation gas onto the strip, you know, so that it was safe from Japs landing. And when the planes were coming, they'd tell us they were coming, we'd have to roll them off and then roll them on again. That was our job. So we were pretty busy, you know.
So it sounds as though you didn't do much jungle training.
There was no jungle training. There was, meanwhile, all the other troops were going down onto the wharves, unloading ships.
And unfortunately, during one of those unloading parties, the Japanese bombed the McDewey, was it?
The McDewey, yeah. Yes, it was, yeah.
And quite a number of 39th troops were lost.
There was some 39th on it, yeah, yeah. There was some of our company too used to go down. But we had done some there. We'd moved position a couple of times by then when the McDewey was sunk.
Your platoon, when you were on the 7 Mile, your platoon, who was your platoon commander at that stage and who were some of your mates in the platoon?
Vance was the platoon commander.
Was he 2nd IF? Or?
No. He was a militia officer. He'd been adjutant of the 5th Battalion, the Victorian Scottish.
And some of your mates?
Goodness me. This is pulling names out of that all these years. He was secretary of the association.
Jim Hardy.
Jim Hardy. There was Jim Hardy. Goodness.
It's probably difficult to remember.
Yeah.
Well, what do you remember about the 7 Mile camp? Was it a pretty rough existence?
Yes, it was. And of course, they were up in the scrub a bit, the platoon, and there was only our section on the drome. You know, the contractors, when they left, they'd left a little tin hut which they had cement and stuff in, and we used to camp in that. And we used to eat. You know, we were just cooking outside. The water truck used to call in occasionally. It used to go around and supply all the companies, and he used to supply our water.
Did you suffer? Did the Japanese bomb the strip while you were on it?
Yeah, did they bomb the trip? Yeah, I think we did about 25 raids on the strip while they were there, and strafed. We had the first raid was rather a funny one. There was a little toilet, you know, a little tin dunny, and it had the old thunderbox in it. And I said, good, we'll empty this, we can use that. Which we did. And of course, you wouldn't want to know, the first bomb dropped right on it, wiped it out, you know. So.
Did you have slit trenches or?
Oh, yes, we were dug in. And after the first raid, we certainly put them down another couple of feet.
JD, did you have any visits from American aircraft, especially Navy aircraft, while you were at the 7 Mile?
Yes, we did. Evidently it was the aircraft carrier Lexington. We didn't know it was off the coast. It must have been just before the Battle of the Coral Sea, probably. And we heard the radial engine, which Zeros had. The Japs had radial engines. And somebody said, no, it's all right, they're American. They landed and I went over and I saw the gunner being the dive bomber used to stand up, and he had a machine gun which he could traverse 360 degrees, and he took his helmet and goggles off and put on this Gob's hat. It's the first American I'd ever seen. And then the pilot pulled his helmet off and put his cap on, you know, it was brass, and I was a good officer. And I saw him, and he had on his uniform. I'd never seen names on uniforms before. And they had Commander Hall, USN. God strike me. So I threw him a boxer, and he said, I'm Commander Hall, United States Aircraft Carrier Lexington, and I'm here for some charts and information. So I looked like giving him all the information at that stage. I said, I was going to say it looked like we were one section 7 platoon. And then the staff car arrived and the Air Force officer, what have you been doing here, and orders us off. And so that was the last. I often wonder what happened to Commander Hall, on the aircraft carrier.
Did you have any involvement with some of the Australian Hudson bombers, and was your job to sort of keep an eye on them?
Yes, we were supposed to ask where they were going, if you don't mind. So, because here's these blokes, they're revving up, and I go over with me dub board and say, excuse me, sir, I got to write down where you're going, to which the commander replied, go and get stuffed, And as it turned out, they were flying reconnaissance missions over a bell. And later on, it was the same crew that came back. And when he came in, he had one wheel hanging down, they'd been shot up. So, we heard them coming, we rolled the stuff off the airstrip, and they crashed onto the side and pulled up. When we went over, I'd never seen wounded people before. When they opened the door, the waist gunner, who was a wireless Air Force bloke, he was all silver. What had happened, he'd received a burst and it exploded all the C markers, and he was all silver. And he was wounded. The tail gunner was dead. The co-pilot was dead. And the captain came out and he was wounded. I forget who it was, but we got our blankets, that we had. We sort of carried them. We had them on the ground under the wing when the Air Force arrived, which once again they ordered us out of the bloody way.
It must have been a bit of a shock to...
It was a shock, yeah. It was a shock, but I remember complaining bitterly. Our CO must have come down. Anyway, he took me in a staff car down to the Air Force, and they had to replace all the blankets. That was a big deal for me. Yeah.
Do you remember the 75th Squadron Kitty Hawks arriving?
I do, but we were off the guard. Then we were on the other side of the strip when they arrived, and we didn't shoot them up because I wasn't on a gun at that stage. But I can remember them arriving, yes.
Did a few of the 39th guys take a few pot shots at them?
Oh, they did. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is that because they weren't warned?
They weren't warned. No, nobody knew they were coming.
They were by that stage, a bit trigger happy.
Oh, they were very trigger happy. If I'd have had a machine gun, I'd have had to go too. But I know the bloke I was in the pit with there, the shot with his rifle, it was just that it was over my shoulder. I couldn't shoot backwards, but he had a shot. Mm.
While you were at the 7 Mile, did they have any entertainment for you?
No.
Nothing?
No, nothing.
What did you do at night?
Well,
guard duty?
The guard duties. We're on guard all the time. We're 2 on and 4 off, and that was it.
At that stage, had you got any letters or parcels from home?
Yeah, we'd started to get mail at that stage. Yeah, it wasn't bad. Yeah.
And
the only information we got was from the water truck. He used to give us all the information. Mm.
What about food? How was the food there? Were there cooks? Or
No, it was all hard tucker, all hard rations. We didn't have any.
What do you mean by hard rations?
Bully beef, biscuits, meat and veg, all tin. We'd cook it ourselves down on the drum.
It didn't sound too appetising.
No, it's not too appetising, but it's all right when you haven't got anything else. Yeah. Mm.
Okay, so once you're at the 7 Mile, you were probably nearly ready to move on to the track, or were you ordered to move on to the track?
No, it was a bit of a while after that. We went out of Bootless Bay after that.
And what was down at Bootless Bay?
Nothing. We were just, there for... I think the Battle of the Coral Sea was on, and that's why we moved down there.
Were you down there to guard something?
Yeah, we were just to dig holes. We were there in the fence, yeah.
Was most of the battalion down there?
No, they were in defensive positions all around Bootless Bay.
So the battalion was pretty much fragmented at that stage.
That's right, yeah. It was always fragmented, the poor old 39th, yeah.
It was very rarely all together.
Yeah, never together. Never together, yeah.
So, how did you feel when you actually set off to Kokoda. Did you know what you were getting into?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We were evidently the last, I think from memory, A Company was the last to go. B Company had gone over, they called for volunteers and we'd been reinforced by that stage by fellas that were in the AIF, our AIF reinforcements, and some of them went to B Company and some militia blokes went too. And we knew they flew over and then D Company reinforced them. Doug McLean's took a platoon over and he reinforced B Company, that's all. And then the battalion was moving, you know. I don't know, I forget now the order of march, you know, but...
Who was the commanding officer then? Had it changed?
Yes. The commanding officer was second, from the 2nd 22nd, he come from Rebel. What was his name?
Was it Colonel Key?
No. He was in the 14th.
Owen?
Oh,
Lieutenant Colonel
Lieutenant Owen. Didn't know him, but knew he was there. And he'd gone over too. And of course, he was killed at Kokoda.
He was killed early on, wasn't he?
Yeah.
With Sam Templeton?
Yeah. Before.
Did you know Sam Templeton?
I didn't know. I only knew of him.
Okay. Had your platoon commanding officer changed, or was he still
Yes,
the same?
we did. We had a fella from the Western Australian Battalion, the 2nd 16th Battalion, Frank Trotter.
And what was he like?
Oh, good. He was a good platoon commander.
Was he only a young bloke too? Like
Yes, he was
yourself?
only a young bloke. When I say young, he was older than us, you know. He was a bloke in his mid-20s. Mm.
How old were you at that stage, JD?
I turned 19 in June and then we started to move in August.
It's pretty young, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, just briefly describe what was it like walking up the track with your company and across the Owen Stanley Mountains?
Oh, good. It was a bit of a shock. Of course, they took us up by vehicle to Owen's Corner, and I can still remember the day one, you know, we were down, and then up, and, you know, we walked all day, and when we stopped that night, we saw where we'd come from. But it was hard going, but, you know, we did all right. I was the point section of our company, being 7 platoon, I was 1 section. So I was a Lance Corporal then. I'm sorry, I was a Corporal. I'd been promoted Corporal then.
Who was the company commander at that stage?
Symington, Noel Symington was the CO. He was also from the 2nd 16th Battalion. We had some good officers.
These were the second AIF.
Second AIF blokes, yeah.
And just describe the jungle. Was it fairly thick and inhospitable?
Yeah, fairly inhospitable, you know, you couldn't get off the track. That was where we got our walking sticks, you know, day one. They cut sticks for us, you know, to help us along. Everybody had a stick to go over.
Were you carrying lots of ammunition and a heavy pack at that stage?
Yeah, we were carrying all our gear, including all our ammunition, grenades, everything.
You would have had fairly basic arms at that stage. Some Thompson submachine guns,
Thompson submachine,
Lee Enfield 3,
rifles,
and a couple of Lewis guns.
And we had Lewis guns then, and we didn't get. When we got to Urey Creek, they issued us with Bren guns. And we had to find who knew anything about Bren guns in the section. And we got our Bren guns there. Mm.
So, on the way there, I mean, you obviously slept out in the open. Did you have to eat hard tack again? And
yes, it was. It was hard tack. It had been cooked, but it was hard.
And did you find that your army uniforms and your boots were standing up to the rigours of jungle warfare?
Well, the uniforms we don't mind. We had leggings, you know. Leggings, for Christ's sake. Somebody had a good idea about them. I think they left over from the light horse, so they gave them to us. Leggings, and we had these shorts which they'd issued in Singapore, and they used to roll them up, and you could pin them up, you know, like balloon trousers. That was what we had. Khaki, of course. Nobody had greens in those days.
Before you went into action, were you resupplied at all with food or ammunition from the air?
No,
Or did you
there
have to
was
bring it up?
no airdrops in those days. We got there and we went over to Dennehy. By the time we got to Dennehy, B Company had been in action with this platoon from D Company, and they'd been in action, and they'd come back to Dennehy too, and they were in a defensive position there when we came up. And the Japs, of course, had they'd been hit, and they didn't know what was there, so they were laying doggos. So we came up, and you can see Kokoda from Dennehy, and then we went on patrols from there. We went down to patrols, and we patrolled around. It was pretty safe fighting patrols. It didn't strike anybody. And then the CO had been killed at that stage down at Kokoda, and the second in command decided the greatest form of defence was attack, so he decided to attack Kokoda.
Was that your first action?
That was the first action, yeah. A Company, we had a native policeman with us called Soputa, Sergeant Soputa, and he knew this track down, and A Company went down the track down the back. C Company went down the main track, and D Company went to Efogi and made Efogi a firm base. The theory was all right, and we got down and we had to wade in the river for about 2 hours to get in the back door of Kokoda. And we got in the back door, and of course we got up, extended line, and Kokoda was a rubber plantation then. Don't know whether you've seen a rubber plantation. It was like the MCG, except it had trees growing in it. We went down through the rubber in extended line, and I thought, this is good. Not a shot was fired. And then suddenly a shot ran out, and we still keep going. And somebody on the right flank, and what happened, there was nobody there. There was only 2 old sick chaps there, which they took out. What had happened, we didn't know. At this stage, they'd left Kokoda and they were on their way to attack us at Dennehy. So we took over Kokoda. The 9th Platoon consolidated in the rubber. 7 Platoon with us were on the flank of the plateau, and 8 Platoon were on the other flank. Kokoda was on a plateau. I had to go out. Two sections of 7 Platoon went out with a platoon sergeant, Win Murray, on a standing patrol towards Efogi. And we were on this patrol, and we were just going to have a bit of tucker. All we landed with, they had emergency rations. They were like a 50 tin of cigarettes, they were these. There was some fruit, compressed fruit, and a bit of dehydrated food, and that's all there was. And that's all the rations we had. So we're having this bit of tucker, and shots start back on the plateau. So Murray said, good, we better go back. So we went back and we came in the other end, and there was a firefight going in the rubber. And we thought it was C Company had come down. They were coming down the main track. And that's exactly what 9th Platoon thought. Well, this fella said, oh, where's C Company now? But it was the Japs. They'd sent back a company to take care of it. And he got killed. Well, we got back in, and when I got back in, the platoon commander said, I want you to take your section up and reinforce 9. So this was the start of the medal then.
Was this your military medal, Jay?
Yeah, I put them in extended line and went out and then wheeled and went up into the rubber. Well, they threw everything at us and nobody got hit. And we went to ground when we got near 9, and I crawled up, and Larry Downs was the platoon sergeant. And he said, I forget this fella's name now, but he was one of the first killed when he said, this must be C Company coming. And they had a Tommy gun. He said, go over and get the Tommy gun off him. So I crawled over. At this stage, it's getting dark. And I'd never seen anybody dead before, and had to strip his Tommy gun and ammo off him, get all his gear. And I took his extra grenades and came back, and he said, he put my section in when I left. Johnny Stormont, I worked with John Stormont, he put him over onto the left of him. He had a Tommy gun, he was my Tommy gunner. Had my machine gun crew, Bill Drummond and Bill Spriggs, he put them in. And I forget the names of the other fellas, they just reinforced me and I forget them now. And I crawled forward on my own. And he said, Vern Scattergood's there, he's got his section up there, so I go forward and I'm whispering out, are you there, Vern, are you there, Vern? And he calls out, yes. And there was only 2 of them up there. He had another bloke called Tony Ruel. Vern Scattergood was in the Victorian Scottish with us. And we hadn't dug in. Everybody was just laying on the ground. I said, what's that for? He said, it's a drain. I said, we'll go forward and get in the drain. So we went forward and got in the drain. There was Scattergood, myself, and Ruel, the 3 of us. And then about 10 minutes later, getting dark, they put in a decent sort of an attack. So we stopped them. And then things quietened down. Anyway, through the night they had 3 decent sorts of attacks. And then dawn broke. And they didn't pull us on in the daylight. And then the next night came. And they put in a couple of decent attacks then. And we were in this drain and they were coming down and there was a footbridge just to the right. It was about where that bedroom is. And they were running across there. And of course we had them skylined, so it was quite handy. So we stopped them. And then they put in the final attack. You could tell it was the final, they were yahooing and in they came. And poor old Scattergood, he gets excited. He had a Bren gun. And he jumps up out of the drain. He was standing up firing from the bloody hip. That was the last I saw of him. He must have got hit. I couldn't find him in the dark. And poor old Ruel, he was there. He didn't fire a shot. And this voice come up, when I settled there. Are you there, JD? Said he. That was Jim Cowie. He said, get out. So, of course, what we didn't know, the rest of the company had left. And Jim Cowie had stayed behind. He knew I was up there. So
Jim Cowie was the company sergeant major?
The CQMS.
Okay.
But he was acting platoon sergeant of 8 platoon. And Bill Guest had taken the wounded and he had 8. So he put somebody else in charge and he stayed by to get us out. So I came out and he said, kneel down behind me here. And old Jim's kneeling down and look, Japs are still wandering through, so if you're a Jap, he shot you. If you're Australian, he said, kneel down here. So he explained to me then that the company had gone and we were the last.
So were you actually cut off at that stage?
Well, we were there. There was the Japs and us. And he said, we'll go now. So I said, what are we going to do? Get down the back? No, bugger. He said, we'll walk across the bridge. There was a swing bridge. He said, they don't know who we are. They don't know where. So calmly puts his right into the trail and walks across the bridge. It was eye windy. So we got to the other side and then we got up onto the airstrip. And he said, we'll have a rest now. So boom. I was with Jim. I laid down because I hadn't slept, for about 36 hours. I hit the ground and boom, I was sound asleep. Next thing, Jim woke me up, it was daylight. He said, we'll keep going. Where do we go? Straight up the main track. So by this stage, there was Jim, there was myself, Tony Ruolt. Oh, incidentally, I found my mate Johnny Stormont, who got there. He'd been shot through the chest. You know, he had a hole in his back that big, and he was breathing through it. And I tried to put a shell dressing on it, and it wasn't big enough. And I said, right, we'll take John. He said, no, you won't. I said, I'll carry him. I said, no, you won't. He said, he's dying, we'll leave him. So we left him. And the others, and Roy Neal, the platoon commander that had 9 platoon, Larry Downs, we were all there. So we continued up the trap. And as we went up the trap, on the huge trees was scarfed and Japanese writing all over them, was signposted, see, all in Jap writing. And this horseman mule, they had mules, see, they had mules carrying them out and going through. So what do we do now? Just keep going. So away we go, the next thing, bang, a burst rings out, it's above Jim's head. He calmly leans against the tree, went bang with his rifle, shot the number 1, number 2 rolled in, and he shot him and continued the advance. So when we got back, they said, oh, we'll break off now. So we went round them, you know.
How far were you from the 39th lines at that stage?
About 6 hours.
So you continued on?
So we continued on, then it got dark and we came to this native village and we propped at the village and Larry Downs, the platoon, we said, we'll go in and have a look what's there, see. So we sort of covered them and they went in, then waved us in and we walked in. As we walked in, the bloody company walked in the other side. That just made it. So the company commander said, these blokes will sleep tonight, you know, the rest will stand too.
So we're surprised when you were recommended for a military medal?
Oh, I didn't know at that stage. It wasn't until we were at bloody Gona somebody died. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was later on when we were up at Isharava. I was there at this company commander conference and they said, incidentally, you've been recommended for a military medal. That's all right.
So it sounded as though you were fairly well led by your non-commissioned officers. Would that be pretty fair comment?
Yes, it was non-commissioned officers that won the Kokoda Track.
You didn't probably have too much contact with the commissioned officers so much on a day. It'd be more the sergeants and the warrant officer class 2s. That kind of.
Yeah. And the corporals.
And the corporals, yeah. Well, the corporals were the section leaders and they probably were the, I suppose, right down at the coalface, weren't they?
Yeah, right. But we, anyway, we hadn't eaten then, of course. We hadn't eaten for a couple of days, about 3 actually. And they cooked food, and I forget these Marys were cooking pumpkin, you know, out of the coals. I snatched it off them. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
It was the best food you'd taken?
Oh, yeah, I used to like pumpkin when I was a kid.
Was that the worst conditions you fought in, do you think?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it got worse.
It got worse at Gona, I suppose.
Oh, well, over the rest of the track. The track was worse. There was no tugger. And, of course, at this stage, all I had left was 1 box magazine of ammo. That's 20 rounds. That's all I had left.
Was this in your Thompson submachine gun?
Thompson submachine gun. My Bren group, we were wandering along the road and they joined us. Bill Drummond carrying the gun. And Bill Spriggs said, I don't think it's any good. It jammed just at the finish. It wasn't any good, so we pull her apart and throw her away. So they had Bill's rifle, that's all they had.
So shortage of ammunition became a bit of...
We were out of ammo. They'd run out of ammo, the gun.
Did you get resupplied at some stage?
Nothing. We didn't have any resupply. So we got back to Isharava then. They were at Deneki, the first group. But by the time we got to Isharava, they'd been pushed back, see.
So tell us about Isharava when you got back there.
Well, when we got back, we were a bit further back and there was a supply train coming up then and the old man got on the phone. There was a phone there then, and rung up and said, could he broach the cargo, because we hadn't had any tucker. And they said yes. So we had a feed then. And then we went up to a Sharaba and they put us into position. And I don't know what happened there, but because we'd been knocked around, and I finished up near battalion headquarters with two fellas. I didn't know they were from E Company, but they had a gun, they were on the group. That's all there was. And me and I had a Thompson. My gun group went up with, I think they put us into a composite section, that's all there was in the platoon left. And then while we were there, Huey Delby, who was a very brave man.
He was very brave at Gona.
Oh, yeah, he took Gona on his own. He'd been overrun, and they got our platoon sergeant to take group in, so I go up then. It was only us, and that was when this fellow broke. I won't mention his name, but he had a Bren gun. He threw it, and he said, I can't do it, I can't go. So Jack Armstead took the gun, and he went forward scout, and I was second scout, and we went in. And when we got there, it might have been overrun, but he'd emptied them out by the time we got there. And that was the first time I met him. And
so that was Isharaba.
that was Isharaba. We were there for a few days.
Did you remember the 2nd 14th?
Oh,
arriving?
yes, I'll say. Well, at that time we had a standing patrol, which was about 3 hours in front of the battalion. That was the warning. And we used to do 24 hours out there. We'd been out once, so. And then there was another group got killed out. We lost a bloke out there, so we had a priest by this time. He wanted to bury him, so I had to go back and escort him all the way out to bury this poor fellow.
Was Ralph Honour commanding officer of the battalion?
No, he wasn't there at this stage. And then
So who was commanding the battalion at that
the
stage?
Battalion 2IC.
Who was?
Don't ask me about it. I forget.
Was it Cameron?
Cameron.
Cameron.
Yeah.
Tell us the story of Darky.
Yeah. Well, while we were there, I tell you what, it was just after I'd been out and escorted the priest out to bury this fella. We come back. There was a resupply. We got some tucker, and there was some tea. We didn't have any bags then. There was tea in a just loose, in a bag. And I thought, now what am I going to do with this? So Darky's there. Previously, there was a bella from battalion headquarters, and I go back up, and the doctor's there treating it. He had a tobacco tin with instruments in it, and Darky's taking it off and he's making a brew on the little fire. So I thought, now he likes tea. I said, listen, Darky, here's some tea. We can't brew up. I want you to look after this, and when we get a chance to light a fire, we'll have it. Good, right, Jody, no worries. So the tea, and so the battle went on, and we were evacuated. We got to Uri Creek. We had a fight there. It must have been bloody a week or so later. I said, we could light a fire here. I said, where's that tea, Darky? And he's looking crestfallen. He said, I ate it. He ate the bloody tea.
You've never forgiven him, have you?
Have you ever eaten bloody raw tea? Yeah, but
He must have been. He must have been
was
pretty
hungry
desperate.
too. He was craving for the tea, poor bugger, and he ate it. Yeah. I tell you what, he was a cleaner on the Melbourne City Council, a street sweeper. And one day I told this story to my mum, and both mum reckoned it was funny. We're down the beach. We lived at Mordialloc then. I said, Christ, there's Dark. I forget his surname now. So we took him, and Mum said, would you like a cup of tea? He'd love a cup of tea. Well, I nearly peed myself. Yeah, because I like love a cup of tea.
OD, after Isharava and all the battles had finished, you'd been relieved. What happened?
Oh, we went back to we went back to Kokoda. We handed our weapons over to the 2nd 27th, all our automatic weapons. And then we went back to by this stage I'd have walked out of my boots. I didn't have a pair to meet them, and got to one of the stations and they said the wounded were dropping their boots there. I got a pair, they were pretty big, and into the mud and stepped straight out of them. So I finished the Kokoda Track barefooted and went to Koitaki. He said us with greens there, a bit of soap and new gear. And 2 days later they set me on a patrol to look for the track that there was another one. Somebody had written up, an old bloke had written the Victoria Barracks in Melbourne and told them there was a track. So they'd been out, nobody had found it. So I went out with another section and we found this track. I went down, it went right down to the Goldie. So I went back and, as a matter, I can't remember who my platoon commander was then, but he helped me fill in the report and took me down to New Guinea Force headquarters, and I had to explain it. And then I had to guide Ralph Honor. I think he took the 2nd 14th night to guide him down to the start of the track. It was from there that we went back down to Bootless Bay.
And after Bootless Bay, did you all reform and then on to the beach campaign at Gona?
Yeah, we were down there and we were digging it, we were reformed. And Porter came along, Brigadier Porter. I remember him saying, I'm going hunting Japs and you're all coming with me. You know, I was very pleased about that. So the way we went, it was pretty traumatic at that time because the 25th Brigade, you know, they were there lined up waiting for their aircraft, and a fully laden bomber crashed into them. Well, killed about 60 or 70 blokes, you know, so nobody was too happy. But we went down into the Battle of the Beaches.
Was the battalion a bit different then? Was it been in action? A lot of guys missing?
Yeah.
You were in all different companies maybe?
Yeah, there was a lot in different companies, but we were pretty well organised, you know. As I said, I was the platoon sergeant then. And when we got down, we had to march up there, of course. We marched from Soputa all the way up to, we marched from Papua to Soputa, and then Soputa to Gona.
And Gona was a particularly
shock.
Terrible.
Yeah, conditions were crook. It's swamp, and the water, we had to, when you dig your weapon pit that fill with water, or we dig a hole, and it'd fill up with water, and you'd fill your water bottles, and we had sterilising tablets we'd put in. But of course, that was only from here to the front gate off all the dead that were laying there. They'd been there for weeks, you know. And no wonder we was lucky to be alive just with that.
So Gona was a particularly bad... Was that where you saw your last action in the war?
No. We went from after Gona fell, we went up west of Gona. They said there was about 116, mainly Huey Delby said it in his memoir. They were mainly administrative personnel, you know, they got up there. Because when we got there, we went up, we had a guide take us up from the 2nd 14, and we're nearly there, and the 2 Jap officers, and obviously it was a sergeant major, they're carrying swords, came down for a wash, you know, at the river, and blundered straight into us. Because had to shoot them, and it was on then for young and old. We were up there for 3 bloody weeks. They were landing their reinforcements there. I forget how many we buried there, you know.
Was that in Hattie's village or?
Yeah, it was Hattie's.
So after Gona West?
And then we came back and we went to Sanananda.
And you were there for a few weeks?
There for a few weeks.
And that was about the finish of it?
That was the finish for me, because I remember we were at, forget the name of the joint now, we used to go in with the sig line in our hand, in the dark, you know.
Huggins Roadblock?
Huggins. So I'm waiting to go at Huggins, and I started to shiver, and I woke up. They carried me out to the RAP, and I thought I had scrub typhus then. That was the end of it for me.
So did you spend some time in hospital in New Guinea and then get shipped back to Australia?
Yeah, I got back to the battalion. I came back to the battalion then.
And was that in Queensland?
No, it was in bloody New Guinea I came back.
And what happened after that?
We came back to Queensland. I think I was the only bloke in the company, that had finished. The rest were back. And I finished in Queensland then, and then we were going to go on leave. And then the night before they were going to go on leave, I threw another sugar doodle, and the battalion went and I had another attack of malaria.
So after the battalion was disbanded, which was a bit sad,
Yeah.
where were you posted?
I had nearly 12 months in hospital when we came in Heidelberg. I had everything wrong with me. And they'd be treating the malaria, and then they found hookworm. They couldn't get rid of. While they're trying to get rid of the hookworm, I was throwing more malaria attacks while I was still treating malaria. So I was in pretty bad order. And
So where were you when the war ended?
I was with an ordnance depot out at Broadmeadows.
And after the war, you did you stay on in the army?
No, I didn't. I got out. I got out in 46. And they wanted me to go to Japan, but they wouldn't. I couldn't pass the medical then.
Okay.
So I got out, and then in 1950 I was out just on 3 years. And I decided to go back to Korea. They said they're taking blokes with their ranks, and then I'll go back with my rank. And money was the name of the game then.
So you rejoined?
So I rejoined.
But you never got to Korea?
I didn't get to Korea.
Okay. Tell us a bit about, you got eventually posted back to the Pacific Island Regiment.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
What year was that?
That was after I came home from Vietnam. When were we in PNG, love? She's gone to sleep.
Well, just tell us a bit about Vietnam then.
Oh, well, I was at the School of Infantry, and I got posted as RSM of 1RAR.
And this was the first tour of Vietnam by Australian?
The first tour, yeah. There was a training team was there, and then they decided to send a battalion. So they sent the battalion, and I went over as RSM. But then, when I came back, you there, Dot? When did we go to New Guinea?
68.
68.
Remember, Michael was born.
Oh, that's right, yeah, 68. So we went to New Guinea, and our first grandson was expected. So imagine how happy Dorothy was going. So I went on my own and then came back and got her later after he was born. But strangely enough, 1PIR headquarters at Tarama Barracks is where we were camped when we went over to Gona.
So, just getting back to Vietnam, it must have been strange to be in another campaign, a jungle campaign, but this time in different circumstances, better trained.
It was better trained and better equipped. We had everything. And of course, with the Americans, we had dust off. If you had a casualty, you'd call them and they'd come in and get him. Didn't matter what the conditions were like, they'd chop her in.
You were working with the airborne, the American
airborne? We were with American airborne, and 173rd, yeah.
And what were they like?
Very good, very brave and very good. And their pilots were magnificent. Yeah.
And they liked being part of the airborne, didn't
they? Yeah. Well, they're very proud. They're like the Marines, the airborne, when you salute the general, the brigadier, of course, the brigadier generals, you'd salute him, you'd have to say, airborne, sir. He'd say, all the way.
How long did you spend in the army all up, JD?
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
And when you retired, what did you retire as and whereabouts?
I was Command Sergeant Major of Southern Command, and they changed over to back to what do they call them now? I forget now, but I was the Command Sergeant. We used to take in parts of Tasmania and southern New South Wales.
It would have been quite a big ceremonial role.
Oh,
too.
big job, yeah, I did. We buried all the generals and ex-generals, and virtually an undertaker. But we did, it was all ceremonial.
And that was an enjoyable...
I enjoyed it, yeah, I enjoyed a good finale.
Was that down at Vic Barracks, was it?
Yeah, at Vic Barracks, yeah. And I had a good send-off too, because the military board, I'd been RSM to about 5 of them when they were lieutenant colonels.
So you must have known some fairly high-ranking officers.
I knew a few, yeah.
Did you know Peter Cosgrove?
Yeah, I knew Peter Cosgrove when he was a subaltern.
Just to probably finish off now, JD, and this is an important question, I suppose. What do you think is important for future generations to remember about the New Guinea campaigns? Have you got any thoughts on that? What the young people should think about what you did in New Guinea?
Yes, I don't think. I think now, and history has just started. They've just realised how famous the 21st Brigade in the AOF and the 39th Battalion were, and we stopped them. There was no doubt about it. If they'd have got through us, I think they'd have been into Australia. And I think they were very gallant. And the 2nd 14th Battalion, I've got the highest esteem for them. They're magnificent. Magnificent.
Well, thank you, JD. That concludes this interview on behalf of the 39th Battalion History Subcommittee. We would like to thank you sincerely for your help and your assistance in this interview.
It was a pleasure.